Hi, I'm Sister Bliss from Faithless. I'm here with Roland, surrounded by an array of gorgeous synthesizers for Behind the Music. We used a mix of digital gear and also real old school analogue gear to create the sounds on our first album, especially the big dance singles Insomnia and Salva Mea. We used a JD800 to create the riff. We had a JV1080, we used to get a lot of pads and kind of glacial sounds off of that. We obviously used drum machines, still got a 909, it still works, can you believe it? And we also had a Juno 106, which we used to have a lot of fun with. Sometimes it would go out of tune and it was a bit temperamental, but I also think that's the beauty of electronic music. It's not entirely predictable, especially when you use analogue gear. And I also think it gave our records a richness that maybe just doing things in a sort of digital format, you know, doesn't give us the same kind of flavour on the records. So on our first album, it wasn't actually a full-on dance album. It kind of went all over the place musically. It was like making a mixtape for a friend with your favourite dance track on, your favourite chill-out track, your favourite hip-hop track, and so on. So we felt like we really needed a track to balance Salva Mea. And Insomnia kind of felt like a more accessible version of that in a way. So we used the same sound for the riff sound, which sounds like a kind of pizzicato sound. Actually, it was an edited clav sound on the JD800 and it had this sort of richness to it, and that's the riff that came out. And that riff opened 1,000 doors for Faithless. At the time, we had no idea that this was going to really affect the rest of our lives. Also, the strings were a really important component. I think right the way through all of our albums, I kind of brought that classical element into our music. So the string sounds were very important, and we got quite a lot of those off the JV1080 and also the D70 as well. There was a particular patch that we always returned to time and time again. So God is a DJ was the first single from our second album, Sunday 8 PM. Lots of people have plagiarised the sounds that we used on Salva Mea and Insomnia as they became huge global hits. And we felt we had to push things forward. We didn't want to just repeat ourselves and do the same thing over and over again. So in a way, it kind of forced us to explore different sonic avenues. And I found the riff, I think the sound was actually a sample, but then we layered it up with sounds from a Juno 106 and also our trusty JV1080 sitting in our rack mount. I think it was really exciting. It's one of my favourite pieces of music to play live. I think Maxi's lyrics are absolutely outstanding on it. And it was a mix of analogue, sampled, and also our beloved synthesizers. We used an SH101 for the bass line, which we also played with the filter on it. We kept it really suppressed before it launches into the chorus. So the bass line is a sort of very simple SH101 sound. So we just played with it a little bit. It's got a bit of acid house in it, which is what I like about it, but in a track that isn't acid house at all. So for Salva Mea, which was the very first track we did when we met Maxi, and we talked all about his philosophy in life. He's a Buddhist, and that was very interesting to us. We'd never met a Buddhist rapper before. We asked him what his Buddhism meant to him, and Rollo came up with this line, "Just below my skin I'm screaming," and Maxi's take on life when it was really difficult was about frustration. And when he was most frustrated, it was when he felt he had no faith in himself. And it was actually because of this expression of what it means to feel like you're struggling in life. That's why we called the project Faithless. And Rollo said, oh, think of some sort of emotional chords that are a bit classical. And these are the chords I came up with. And we wrote the song around that sequence of chords, which came at different times in the song, and there's a really amazing bit where it breaks down to just the strings, which has this kind of majesty, and it feels like something that's become a bit of a signature for us. Big, grand, majestic strings, they just do something soul-stirring, I think. And it all came out of the Roland D70, and some from the JV 1080 as well, because we do like to layer our sounds. Mass Destruction was the first single to be taken off our 4th album, No Roots, and we were right in the middle of the Iraq War, and we really felt we had to say something about the world that we were living in at the time. The music that actually became the basis for the single was a remix that a guy called Peanut was working on, and I was working on it with him, and it felt so groovy and funky. We decided to keep that version as a single version because we actually recorded No Roots in one key all the way through. It was like we set ourselves parameters to work in. I Need Someone is the next single from our brand new album, All Blessed. And basically it had this chord sequence just going around that was on an organ, which gave it that real kind of feeling of a hymn, if you like. Just. And that was it. It just runs through the song. I mean, we do that a lot in Faithless. Maybe that's my limitations as a keyboard player, but I love chords that just run in a sequence that can be the same for the verse and the chorus. I think it's got a really hypnotic vibe to it. Our new single is called Synthesizer. It's from our brand new album, All Blessed, and it's a hymn to everything that we love in electronic music. Synthesizers have been the backbone for Faithless right from the beginning. We have blended our sound with acoustic instruments along the way, but we couldn't have done what we've done without drum machines and synthesizers. Seeing as we were making a song about synthesizers, we decided to switch on our dusty old analog synths that are sometimes very temperamental, and we brought in little touches all the way through the song. And because we hadn't released a record for 10 years, it definitely felt like we were making a bit of a statement, and we wanted it to sound faithlessy yet completely of the time. So I very much hope people come on that journey as they have done since we launched our very first album, Reverence, all those years ago. Luckily, we are still in the business of making albums, and All Blessed is the latest one.